Now that you're a little more familiar with the interface of Blender, it's time to take a look at how the Blender interface is made up. Because the way Blender works is that when you save files, those are saved in a file known as .blend file, and the layout of your interface is also saved in that file. So often when you download files from internet, the interface might look completely different because the person who worked on that project might have their interface set up differently. Also, Blender is a very customizable application, and if you can really fine-tune it to your liking, then it makes it fun and easy to work in it. So, the way Blender interface works is that we have different areas, and within those areas we have what are known as editors. So we have this one giant area for an editor for this 3D viewport, and then we have one for our outliner, one for our properties editor, one for an animation timeline. And if you look closely in the top left corner of each editor, you'll notice that we have the same button in all of these different editors. And this lets you change the type of editor in that area. For example, if I want to have a 3D viewport in this area, I can just click on this button and select 3D viewport. And now using my middle mouse button, I can rotate the view. So now I have two identical panels in my interface. And I can do the same thing down here. So now we have three different panels that are exactly the same. Now we can resize any of these areas by simply hovering our cursor over these borders and then sort of dragging and changing the scale. If you want to add additional areas to your interface, that's pretty simple. You simply hover your cursor in corner of any area. For example, I can hover my cursor in any of these corners and you can see that the cursor changes a little bit. And now I can simply left click and hold and drag, and here you can see that I added a vertical split, but if I drag towards the top, then that's going to be a horizontal split. So now we have many different areas. Now if we want to go back, we can just go to outliner at the top and then properties editor at the bottom, and then maybe we can resize it. And if you want to collapse or remove an area from your interface, that's pretty simple also. You simply hover your cursor again, and then you simply left click and hold and then drag. So in this case, we're moving or collapsing our top panel towards the bottom, just like that. And let's do the same thing for this area, and then we can do the same thing for the bottom. Now you can do this in a different way, and that's a bit easier way of doing it, and I personally like to do it that way. So you can right click on any of these borders and it gives you this area options, and then you can add a vertical or a horizontal split. So in this case we'll go with horizontal split, and then you simply hover your cursor and left click. And let's change that to our properties editor, and we can also sort of resize it so we're back to a default layout. Also, if you right click, you have join areas, so this is going to let you collapse, and you can also swap the panels if you need to. And for joining, you can hover your cursor to expand the bottom panels towards the top or top panel towards the bottom, like that. Now I personally like to just simply right click on these borders and use these options instead of hovering my cursor in the corner of an area. Next, we have these buttons at the top. These are known as workspaces, and this basically is a different arrangement of the layout. So for example, if we go to UV editing, now this is going to make a complete sense to you. So we have an area on the left side, and then we have an area on the right side. And we can simply right click here and swap these two, or we can change the type of panels that we're using. So we can select a 3D editor on this side, and then we can click here and select our UV editor here. So now you're able to customize this, and you know how everything is made up on the interface. So if you download a file from internet and the interface looks completely different, now you have a pretty good idea how you can make it look like the default layout. Also, these buttons at the top, what I usually like to do is get rid of all of these different buttons because I mostly work in this layout workspace, so I just keep that and a few custom buttons. Now, you can change these by simply double clicking on top, and then you can rename it to your liking. You can also right click on top of it, and then you can duplicate this and then use it as a starting point for customization. You can delete it. You can move these workspaces to front or back, which basically means moving it to the very left or very right of the interface. And then you can also sort of cycle through these. So let's quickly go ahead and delete some of these workspaces so that we can change our interface layout. And don't worry about messing up anything because you can always revert back very easily. Also, you can click on this plus symbol and then you can pick one of these previous workspaces as a starting point for your customization. So for example, this layout is exact copy of our original layout, and then from here maybe we want to sort of resize these panels. So I like my layout something like here, so I can do that. Now one thing to keep in mind here is that all of these changes that we're making so far are not saved. So if we close Blender and reopen it, all of these changes are going to be discarded because we have to save what is known as a startup file to make these changes permanent. Just to demonstrate, I'm going to go ahead and click on this file menu, new, and then journal, and we're not going to save our current file, and you can see everything sort of resets immediately. Let's go ahead and change everything again. So we're going to sort of rescale this, and let's just double click here and type in demo. Now to make these changes permanent, we can go to File menu, and then towards the bottom we have Defaults. Let's click on Save Startup File and then confirm that we want to save our startup file. And at the bottom status bar, you can see Set Startup File was saved. And now these changes are permanent. So if we go back to File menu, New, Journal, and Don't Save, you can see those changes are there. Now, if you mess something up and you saved your startup file, you still don't have to worry about it, because you can go to the File menu and then again to the Defaults menu and then load factory settings. Now, when you confirm that, it's going to load the factory settings and make Blender look like the way you downloaded it. And now since these settings are loaded, but we haven't saved our startup file, so we're going to go ahead and save these default or factory settings to our startup file. So that's how you can really fine-tune and customize Blender to your liking, and how that entire interface of Blender works.